Hi everyone, welcome to An Hour with LawSikho. This is Ramanuj from IP Leaders and LawSikho.com, and with me I have a very dear guest today who is on An Hour with LawSikho for the first time, Shwetank Chaubey. Shwetank
Hi
is
Ramanuj.
working with different law firms, starting his career with Desai and Diwanji, and then now he's working at Khaitan. And we'll soon ask him more about his life and his career. He's going to talk today mostly about how, what are the challenges young lawyers face in law firms, and especially if they work in corporate law firms, and what, how to deal with those challenges. Shwetank, over to you.
Hi Ramanuj, and thanks for having me on the platform today, and also thanks a lot to Mohana. So basically, I did my law school from ILS Law College, Pune. Graduated in 2016. I got a college placement in my fifth year with Desai and Diwanji, Bombay, with the corporate M&A team. I worked there for around 15 to 16 months. And recently, I mean, around 10 to 11 months back, I joined KCO with the corporate team. Yeah, so I'll be taking up questions from law students, people who have just joined, who are looking to, know how to really go about a corporate job. And yeah, I mean, we can go ahead.
To first tell us a little about yourself, like what, where do you come from, which city, and how did you get
Right.
into law? If you can give us some background so that when you give different answers, the students or the viewers can actually relate to it.
Right. So, Ramnuj, I've done my school from Bombay itself. I was in Delhi Public School, New Bombay. I've done my 12th from there. I took up commerce in my 11th and 12th. And the idea always was, after 10th to pick up the commerce stream so that, I could do something related to commercials. And in my 11th is when I really decided that I'd want to take up law. And during the course of the first couple of years, the first and the second year, I really decided that this is something that corporate law is something that I'd want to take up as a career. Although it's not only because of the want to do it, I would also say that I did try to do a couple of internships with litigation law firms as well initially. And obviously the basis of arriving at a decision was really trying to experience the kind of life both streams of lawyers actually go through, and to have some sort of a background to arrive at a decision. So yeah, I mean, that was that. And also the fact that I did um, in corporate law as well. There are, I mean, you have specific streams. It being M&A, you have private equity. But initially, when I started off at DND, there were no such streams. But here in KCO, you do have particular teams who do mostly a certain kind of work, be it PE or be it just generic M&A. So that is the kind of division that came about later, only in the last few months. But yeah, I mean, I started off doing just um, general corp initially.
We hear this term a lot, general corporate, okay,
Right.
general corporate practice. What is general corporate practice? What does one have to do in general corporate practice?
So it could entail anything. So starting from advisory work for big corporates, and also would also entail transactional work. But the transactions would vary. If for example you are investing in a company, whether you're a strategic investor or whether you're a financial investor or whether you're a PE investor. So the amount of investment, the kind of investor would really determine, and what you really want to achieve as an investor would really determine what kind of transaction it is and what the purpose of investment is. Um, so in general corporate, it is not a fixed kind of transactional work that you would keep on getting. It might be PE work, or it might be a general strategic acquisition, 100% acquisition It would also have carve out structures where you're doing business transactions, your BTAs, you're doing asset sales, but teams or places or
But
firms
one
which
question, I have one question. You're mostly talking about transactions, but we have specific transaction teams, like there are PE and M&A teams in different law
correct,
firms,
correct,
teams in different law
correct,
firms. But
correct.
we are separate general corporate team. Like, is their main job to transactions? Apart from like, what's the difference between a transaction team and a general corporate?
So in a transactional team, so what would you really happen is that it would entail everything that a transaction has, right from the beginning, where you have the term sheet stage, and you have diligences, you have documentation, negotiation. It is a and involves a lot of aspects as well. But in general corporate, you would have advisory, you might have transactional work, you would also have to do a lot of memos, a lot of legal opinions. So I've seen like teams which are traditionally only transactional teams would end up doing mostly diligences, negotiations, documentations, and a little bit less of memos and legal advisory stuff.
Okay, so would you say that the skill sets required in these two areas are more or less similar, or
It's more or less similar, yes. Because if you ask me whether in general corporate and advisory work would you require better research skills, I think when you're doing a diligence, you would still need the same kind of research skills. What really matters in whatever work you're doing is whether you are able to bring out what the intent is in your drafting. Let it be a diligence report or let it be an agreement. The idea is to bring out the intent clearly so that everything is just out there in black and white, and people and parties do not have to think about things which are really not covered in the document.
got it? So it seems that general corporate teams is definitely a very specialized skill. So what are the areas of law that a lawyer has to know very well to do well in general corporate? What are the areas
Right.
of law that must
Right, right. So, Ramanuj, basically, um, a corporate lawyer is supposed to know a bit of other streams as well. Let it be the real estate aspect of transactions, where you're supposed to know the basic idea of how a lease works, how a sale of an immovable property would happen, what are the kind of documents that are typically entered into for land related transactions. Because so if you look at a transaction, or a typical transaction where a company is basically acquiring another company, you would want to know what is the kind of immovable asset the company owns. You would also want to know the kind of IP the company has. So you would also require a little bit of IP basic knowledge as well. um, Other than that, you would also want to know other aspects, basically of FEMA. Yeah.
but then besides the things that you need to know a little bit of, what are the areas that you need to really know
Exactly.
very
So I was just getting to that. So now, company law is something that you need to know in and out, right? That is one, and the other aspect being the foreign exchange control regulations. So most of the times you would have an investor who's not investing from India, and would set up a fund somewhere else in a country where you have lesser tax related issues. And you would really need to know what are the entry routes for a foreign investor, what are the exit routes for an foreign investor, what are the kind of restrictions. So these are things that you need to familiarize yourself with while you've just joined, or while you're in your last few years in college. And these are things that you really master with practicing it and applying the concept in different situations. um,
so that
that
you
is really very,
so just to make sure that I'm getting it right. So you said FEMA and you said companies law, most important thing.
these are the two really for the top two laws that you would really want to know about
Okay.
properly.
Besides these, what would be the other ones? Like, what would you say SEBI regulations is something that.
Correct. So, and also now it really depends whether you end up doing a lot more of listed entity work. So you would also have your LODR, the listing obligations and the listing obligation regulations. That is that, and you have the ICDR. So couple of if a transaction which involves a listed entity, you would have other than the generic company law angle, you would also have the SEBI angle that would apply. So that is also something that you need to familiarize yourself with. That and also some a little bit of tax knowledge would also help in terms of capital gains, your direct tax angles, because you typically in a transaction you would have investors who have already owned shares of a company and are looking to sell it to somebody else. What are the kind of withholding tax angles that you want to look at? So tax is also something that you would want to have a generic idea with.
Got it. So, what would you say are the like the challenges people face with respect to these things? Because I have seen myself when I joined a law firm in Mumbai, it was trilegal after college, and I know it from even my other batchmates. Everybody was struggling, although we did well in we went to a good national law university, did well in our class. Most of us were doctors in our class, and we had done our studies well. But even then, when we joined the law firm, we struggled in terms
Right.
of the whole new things that were coming up we never even heard of, right? So I remember when I was an associate almost with 1 year of experience. Uh, a student coming up, intern coming up, and she's like, obviously she studied everything in college and she couldn't got the internship on her own merit. Coming and asking what is an NBFC, and everybody started laughing. You know,
Correct.
in the whoever was sitting near me, everybody started laughing at what is an NBFC.
Right.
Now, I'm guessing these kind of things are quite common for young associates. What is your experience with respect to this, and what can people do to make this
No,
fail?
so Ramanuj, what I would say is that when a student is interning with a law firm, the basic idea should be for the student to understand what is the entire process. So, what is it exactly that the people in a transaction are trying to achieve, right? So, if you're looking at an associate who's doing a diligence, what is the purpose of a diligence in a transaction? What is the end result of a diligence, and how is it used in documentation as a process, right? Because the transaction is spread over processes and a lot of steps. So, for an intern to understand the entire process would obviously put the particular student a few steps ahead of others when they start off, because they are well familiarized with the process of a transaction. So once you understand that this is what we are trying to achieve, your review work or the way you look at a transaction would differ a little, right? In terms of uh, the transactional work and you knowing about things beforehand, what I would suggest is that you pick up the bigger transactions that are happening in the country. These are things which are usually you need to you basically need to understand what the complexity of a particular deal is. So although these which are usually not there out in the public, you would still find newspapers who are typically talking about transactions which are about to happen, or or almost public. So you would want to pick up these nuances and really test them about basis your knowledge of the law. That is another point, and also the fact that um, as a student, what is really, and as someone who is really starting, um, what is important is for you to have seniors who would help you out in terms of you arriving at a particular conclusion. So you do your review from your end, you do your research from your end, but it really doesn't take anything away from you if you're spending 5 minutes to just um, cross check it, be, you just be confirmed about your opinion about the issue. You know, it's simply because it is a practice, right? So in 3 to 4 years, if someone has done the same thing for a few more times, they just know of they just end up knowing a bit more about the particular topic, and would probably help you out with one or two angles that you've missed out on. So it's really not something that everybody is supposed to know everything before they start. Obviously, it is a process, and process teaches you everything. So, and it's hit and miss. There are certain times where you do not actually pick up things that you should have picked up while you're looking at something. But the second time you do the same thing, you will probably know how to go about a particular process, or look at a certain document a certain way, or have a broad overview about things.
All right. So,
Hello.
even a job or even internship sometimes in a good law. So you have managed to work with Desai and Diwanji, which is considered a very good firm, and now at Khaitan, one of the best. So what does one do to stand out and get selected?
Okay, so while you are interviewing with firms, and okay, so to start off with, it is really important for you to understand the opportunity that you get, right? Because there are colleges, and there are there are students who really are quite good with their academics, but do not really end up getting the kind of opportunities that others probably do. So the first thing to do is to take opportunities seriously. You understand that, okay, fine, I mean, I've gotten this because of something, and I need to make the most of it. So that is the first step. The second step is to have a good CV, right? So if you have a good CV, and it's well formatted, other basic things that you can't have things that you really don't know about in a CV. So these are basic things. So the thing that really matters while you're interviewing is that you need to showcase people, your interviewers, that finally really know what is required, because they are really not looking for anything more than basic knowledge about things that you will be working on, right? And there is a slight disconnect in what you learn in college and what you really do in a corporate law firm. So something as basic as a stamp act, although it's something that you can just read up and understand, and it's not something that really needs to be taught, but it is something very basic, and which is something that is not really covered in curriculums. At least we didn't have it. So so for you to know things that probably someone else who studied their basic curriculum wouldn't know. Knowing the stamp act in and out. If you have work, so for example, if in an internship you've simply just proofread a shareholders agreement, right? You've not entirely understood it, but you still know that there are certain steps of a ROFO, or a right of first refusal, certain commercial concepts, right? Which is not basically something that you would be taught in a law school. Although it's something that you have not understood, but you have a generic idea of it. In an interview, you can tell them that yes, these were things that I did read, and I know about. And you can basically touch upon things that would really show that these are things that you're not taught about, but you know of. So SEBI regulations, if you can talk about the takeover code. So these are things that I did in my interview with DND. A lot of people probably in their internships wouldn't have had the opportunity to do a couple of things, but I had the opportunity of writing notes on the takeover code, the entire process that entails, that is required in case of a listed entity takeover. So I was basically asked questions on just the basic idea of how a takeover would work. So these were things that I am pretty sure that the others in who were interviewing with DND at that point in time, the 7 or 8 other people, did not have on their CVs. So it's just a mix of everything, and you being serious about the opportunity. I think that is really important, because it's not everybody who gets it, and once you get it, you've got to make the most of it.
So, in your experience, what sort of people have a lot of tough, like, what are the mistakes people make in this field?
Right. So the attrition rate being high, so it's uh, you know for you to have an idea about things and actually going through the ranks and doing the kind of work that is required of an associate to first level or a second level associate. It is really time consuming. The work that you do is because you are the first person in terms of it being a layer where the real work is done. So you do your work, you prepare the first cut of a document which is an 80-page document, and that is reviewed by somebody else who is above you, right? So one needs to understand that the work is time consuming. You need to be at it. So it's not really something that you can just be careless about. You've got to keep on reading what you've written to understand that yes, this is what the intent is of me drafting this particular line. um, and also it's about being diligent. So that's what a diligence basically teaches you, and that's the most amount of work that is required in the first couple of years, because diligence is not something that everybody wants to do, but it does teaches you a lot about a lot of qualities that any professional would need to have in life. So you being organized, you being diligent, how to really review a document. These are basic things of a corporate lawyer, basic qualities of a corporate lawyer. And one needs to make peace with the fact that fine, if I really want to get to a level where I'm negotiating, because these are, when you look at partners or PAs or SAs negotiate a particular draft, I'm pretty sure if you are the kind of person who is inclined towards a corporate law firm job, you would really like that kind of work. Okay, so for you to get to that stage where you're negotiating and you're drafting documents, you really need to understand that if you're not going through the ranks at this point in time in the first couple of years, you will really struggle at a senior level. So these are things which are basically necessary for everybody. So yeah, so it's that and a lot of other abstract qualities.
What would you say are the top three mistakes people make?
Okay, so one is to take a hasty decision. Okay, I have seen people who have just after a couple of bad days or few bad weeks, they've decided that things are not working out for them, and have just decided basically to quit law or just quit law from life. So one needs to understand that even in a law firm where you have a lot of work, it is very much cyclic. You have certain months where there is a lot of work and you are basically just in office for 12, 13 hours in a day. But one needs to understand that there are days where work is slightly less, and you have weeks where you're leaving at a good time. So first is to not take a hasty decision. That's one. Two, in terms of there being work, the point is that while you're um, generating a document or while you are completing a particular task, it is really important for you to check with others, which is a point that I just made. It is important that because the thing is that your seniors would probably work on 15 or 20 other things, and they really heavily rely on your work as well, because if it is an advisory work, it is really you who is doing the basic research and is basically generating the entire memo or an opinion. So it's really you who is being held responsible for the initial hard work. So it is important that you check with others, and that the draft that you are preparing is foolproof. That is one. And the third thing is, you not having proofread your documents properly, or clause reference your documents properly. These are, so the point is that every law firm looks to have every product that they send out to clients to be of really high quality, right? And you can ensure quality only when you've ensured that the document reads fine. So it's really that. So a good reading document that makes sense, a document which is wholesome in terms of you knowing that yes, I've covered all possible angles, and I think that's about it. I mean, and one needs to really understand that mistakes are, it's just a part of your career. So whether you're a cricketer or whether you're a lawyer, mistakes are things that you will come across, and you're just basically supposed to learn from them.
Okay. So I guess when people begin to practice, they are so unfamiliar with the standards of law firms and at what level they need to have diligence, and I think people tend to leave some loose ends at times, and that probably affect a lot. So apart from this, what would you say are the challenges of working as a lawyer in the first few years? Because I have seen people saying that they have really tough time managing their health. Many people leave law firms saying that and this went on for months, and definitely it had an impact on my health, and like you inevitably have an impact on your mind and your spirit as well when you keep working like this. And what's your experience and what's your advice here?
Right. So, Ramanuj, it really, as a firm, if you talk about my experience, KCO is a firm which basically does focus on a lot of other aspects as well, and not just work. So you would have these random weeks where the team is taking you out for an outing, where you're going out for football, you're playing cricket. So these are things that the firm really takes it up, and they ensure that people who are interested to take things up, like for example, on Fridays we have Zumba in office, and whoever is interested can take an hour out and just do some sort of Zumba. And there's a gym in the same building, so people just take off from work for a couple of hours, 1 or 2 hours, work out, come back, and then probably work for a bit. So it's about understanding that that health is obviously primary, right? So you need to understand that you've got to take some time out. You've got to take at least 30 to 45 minutes out for yourself in a day, do some sort of meditation, or probably work out, go for a walk or something like that. And yes, eating habits are, it's difficult to control them. It's just the fact that you need to understand that your lifestyle is now not how it used to be in college, and you really need to focus kind of food that you're eating. So I think half your problems would go away if you're eating the right kind of food. So that's the first thing. But it is really essential that if not every day, but you do try to take out at least 3 times or 4 times in a week, at least 1 hour for yourself, go play football. So that is what I do every Wednesday nights, 10:30 in the night to 12 o'clock in the midnight. We play football every Wednesday. So that is what I do. And then Saturday and Sundays is I just hit the pool, or probably go to the gym for an hour or so. So my idea is to at least have 3 to 4 days in a week where I'm doing something for myself. That's that. But it's also about uh, the the students understanding that yes, you are not anymore in a college setup. It's Things are actually real now, and you understanding the fact that that you've got to really be responsible in terms of your health, your work life, and also your family life, because you need to take out time and visit your family if you're not from Bombay, because fortunately I stay with my family. So for me it's quite important that I do take out time for them as well. So it's that. I think it's manageable if you really want to manage it. Otherwise, if you don't want to manage it, everything is difficult.
Well, yeah, I hope that it will be manageable because a lot of people do complain and a lot of people I think leave the law firm world because of this. But yeah, like what you said, some hope that yes,
Right.
people do manage. Only few people manage. Honestly speaking, a lot of them do not manage. So one
I know,
reason
but
I
so it really helps to have, for at least KCO, there's a gym right in the same building. So I see a lot of people who just, hop out of office for a few hours. They do make it a point, at least, even if it's late in the night, they take out probably an hour or so, 9 to 10 o'clock in the night, work out, come back to office if it's required. And also, you know, at least KCO I know because it's a much more employee friendly firm. I've seen partners allowing a few days where you think that your health is not fine. They do let you work from home. It's not a hard or fast rule where you've got to have FaceTime every time. But it's really about also the rapport that you share with people. Yeah, as long as your work is done, if you think that you can do it from home, so there is a facility of you having laptops, you can go back home. If you think you can do it, sitting at home, having dinner at the same time, finishing it off, you can do that as well. It's not necessary for you to finish off work at in office itself. So that is the kind of leeway that at least we get here. So I think all of these things, I mean, there are, the employers are, I think, wary, and they know that this is something that is a major deterrent for people, that that it is something that really takes a toll at times on your health and on your life as well, your personal life. So, and also the fact that I think people need to understand that for you to do better and to get somewhere in whatever career that you take up, you've got to make certain sacrifices, right? Now Sachin Tendulkar hasn't become the best batsman just by going out for parties at the age of 17. He's also sacrificed a lot in life. Basically, probably all this is entire teenage and also probably his first few years when he started off playing as a batsman. So it's just basically you knowing that yes, you've got to make certain sacrifices in life, and it's not every Friday that you can go out with your friends, or every Saturday that you need to be with your family. So it really balances out. So yeah, that's that.
so I think that makes a lot of sense. To get somewhere in life something you really want, you have to pay a price. Understandable. Can you tell us like
And hopefully it's not health that price is. It's usually just
yeah.
you giving up on your family plans or whatever. Yeah.
But at the same time, one thing I want to point out is that I feel that because there is no prior training, actually the training we get in our law colleges and law
Correct.
schools
Correct.
are not oriented towards this. Like something as basic as due diligence is not
Is not
difficult to
taught.
teach, or if they want, like that you're going to work in a law firm, why cannot you learn about maybe how to work on a shareholder agreement,
Correct.
or
Correct.
how, like, what are the regulations that they have. But what I found is that when you have to learn this and do the work at the same time for the first time in your life, it's really overwhelming for people.
Right.
That is why perhaps the first couple of years in a law firm are the hardest years. After that, and the work becomes regular, and you know that okay, this is what I have to do, and you
Correct.
have a grip over things.
Correct,
But
correct. So,
the first,
Just to add to what you're just saying, I think there's some sort of disconnect with what the legal profession requires and what the commercial angle to a transaction requires. So, I think in the first few years you also do realize what is the commercial intent of the transaction, because if there is no commercial intent, there is no transaction, right? And the legal side is there just to facilitate and to ensure that it is all legal, that the commercial intent is legally done. So I think yes, you do need to have some sort of training in the last few years of college where you're really taught about what is done in law firms. But I think it is also in the first few years you do understand and you do get a hang of what the commercial guys want and what really the intent of the client is. So once you've understood, once you've put yourself in the position of your client or the commercial guys, you do know that this is where I need to be reasonable, this is where you know I need to go by the book, and just do what law says. So it's really I think the commercial angle of things in law schools as well. If you do know that you want to take up corporate law, I think that is something that because in a shareholders agreement, yes, there is a lot of law, but there is also a lot of commercial angle to it. So whether if I'm an investor and I want the promoters not to leave the company, then I would have a right of first refusal in my favor. So these are things which are not just legal but also commercial, right? So I think there
Yeah,
is a disconnect in that.
absolutely. And when I was writing, I was thinking, what books should I include? And I was thinking, okay, I'll include Roses in December and all the usual law books and the biographies of MC Kagla, Nani Palkiwala, and all of that.
Right, right,
And and I was thinking that what is actually the problems that lawyers actually face. Somehow, there are such like as lawyers we are so engrossed into the legalities we forget the in the economic context, the political context in which we do the work,
right,
and now even technological context is very important. Now, as I mean, once you start practicing and you gain more experience as a lawyer, you start realizing that law is a support function at best. It's not the be all and end all. Like somebody is trying to achieve something and you are helping them in achieving that, and law is a medium
correct,
through which they have to pass through and they have to go through. But beyond that, there is something else being done. And until as a lawyer you start understanding that, perhaps it's very difficult
correct,
to do well as a lawyer.
right.
So I think that's a great insight you shared. So, what would you say are the best, you know, moments you had in the first 2 years of your practice?
Right. So, Ramanuj, I think for any corporate lawyer, if you worked on basically transactions which that have closed in front of you, you worked on them and you see them happening in front of you, that I think brings a lot of satisfaction to you. So, because it's out there in the public, so we did a deal where there was it was a retail deal, and we it was a brand which wasn't in India and was entering India for the first time. We help them set up shop in India, and once you see people buying that brand and you see that very brand opening up a store right next to your house, which is that is something which is overwhelming. And I've seen also my colleagues who worked on other transactions where in Desai and Diwanji, basically Bandhan Bank, they were the biggest clients that Desai and Diwanji had, and when they set up shop and when in India, when they're actually doing quite well. So for a lawyer who's worked on transactions and they see the transaction unfolding and the real thing after the transaction happening, I think that is what really brings the satisfaction to you.
Great. So, if I understand, when you see your deals on economic times announced, when perhaps your name is mentioned in some article about the deal, so that's really a satisfying thing for lawyers. What are the what would you say have been the biggest challenges you personally faced while in the past 2 years of your career?
Right. So, in the first few years, I mean, I've only just completed 2.5 years now, but it's still the first few years for me. But To be honest, for me
It would
to
be nice if you can be a little louder. Sometimes we cannot hear you.
hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, very clearly.
Okay, so personally for me, it's been slightly difficult in the first few months when I started off to really put my other plans, my family plans, and my plans with my friends aside, and just basically saying yes to a lot of people for plans and just not showing up. So these are things which, and also giving up on, so because I was a footballer in school, so and college as well, so I'd play on weekends, and I'd play quite a lot during college as well. So that is something that I had to basically give up, because you wouldn't have other people who are there to play with you in the night. So it's yeah, so I mean, I had to give up on my sports, that was one, and also on a lot of plans. So I mean, personally, for me, these were two challenges in the personal side of the work life. But in terms of work at a law firm, um, in Desai and Diwanji, I was, because of lack of a lot of people, and like unlike KCO where you do have so many people and you do have the liberty of resources, you have probably not one, two, or three people working on the same transaction. You have quite a number of seniors as well. In Desai Diwanji and in a smaller law firm, what usually happens is that y- most of the times you are just thrown into the pool. You're supposed to learn how to swim, and it's really hit and miss. So the first few times when I was supposed to undertake something which was hit and miss, I just did most of my work because of what others told me, and that this is how you're supposed to do it. No, I don't think you're doing this right, I think you should do it this way. So I think being in that position does teach you a lot, because you've made so many mistakes when you've done it for the first time. My first diligence, I couldn't even imagine how a diligence report would look, right? So I just blindly did what was asked, and when I did see the report go out, okay, to the client, and I just saw the final product, I was like, okay, fine. So it looks like this. Okay, this is how it's supposed to be done. The second time I did it, I did it quite well. So it's just about you having done a particular kind of work for the first time, which just gives you a lot of impediments in terms of it being a learning experience. You do it for the first time, the second time you do it, you do something more than the first time. So personally, in terms of work, it's been quite difficult when I started off with the smaller law firm, because the partner, it was me and a partner who were working direct. I was working with the partner directly, so she would give me work, and she would expect that I do the work completely, and just churn out the document. So and I would really just churn out the document. So and I would really struggle. So I mean, the first time I got an SHA, I was only in my second month or my third month, and I was just supposed to basically churn out an entire SHA within a day or two. And although now that I think of it, I did a horrible job on it. But the first time I was doing it, I did have to speak to so many people, struggle a lot, do it all wrong. But it is also important that your senior and your boss understands that this boy or girl is only a junior now, and it's only time, and with time people do learn. Probably few would learn faster than others, but it's not something which is rocket science. It's basic logic, and anyone who has basic logic would end up doing well. It's really not that difficult.
Great. If I ask you, like, see, you know that we are a legal education company and we do teach people to the practical sides of the law. So let's say we want to prepare somebody to work in a general corporate law. A student comes to us, or a young lawyer who hasn't worked in a law firm comes and tells us that I want to work in a corporate law. Then what are the few things you do? Did you follow my question?
Ramanuj, even now in KCO, what we, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I hope you could hear my question.
No, so there was some sort of a lag in the end, but could if you could just repeat the entire bit.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So I'm saying that we are an yeah, yeah, sure. So I'm saying that we are an if I'm asking based on your experience, what would be your suggestion? That what should we teach? Let's say a young lawyer or a law student
Right.
comes to us and says that I want to learn things which will increase my likelihood of getting a job and succeeding at the in the job in a general corporate role. Then what should we be teaching them in that case?
Okay. Ramanuj, I think uh, for for any lawyer who's a transactional lawyer, let it, because a general corp lawyer would do a lot of other opinions and advisory work which really depends on the law of the sector. If it's a telecom related issue or if it's a pharma related issue, it really depends on how much you know of that particular law, and you can't basically just teach all particular sectors to a student. But in terms of it being transactional work, I think what is important for people to know is that, okay, one is the process. Okay, you know that these are the stages. Okay, fine, you have the diligence process, you have the documentation process, you have the negotiation. Fine. So in a document, what are really the concepts that one really deals with? So whether it be a rep, whether it be a warranty, whether it be a CP list, which is basically nothing that is churned out of a diligence report, whether these are indemnities that one needs to know about. So it being a basic contract law concept of damages. So I think for anybody to know what basically is required in the entire transaction process. So if it is in a documentation, you have sellers who have certain disclosures towards reps and warranties, right? So understand that if you are drafting a particular clause and you are drafting the same clause for a buy side, so if you are representing a buy side, an investor or a purchaser, how do you draft the same clause, right? And how do you draft the same clause from a sell side, because you would want it to be seller friendly. So or in the investee side, the company side. So you really need to know how to basically tweak language in either of the sides, and basically what is really favorable for the side that you are representing. So even in KCO, what we really have every couple of weeks is that we have this training session on PE transactions. So what happens really is that a particular partner or a senior person, a PA, would take up a topic, for example, a disclosure letter, which is a process oriented document, which forms part of the transaction document. It's not forms part, but it is done as a part of a transaction document stage. So someone will take up disclosure letters and tell you how are disclosure letters prepared, how is if someone is disclosing, then what are the kind of clauses that the investor would put in the documents, so that you are safe and that your disclosures are not hampering your ability to seek indemnification from the company or the promoters. So it's really about knowing both sides that you can represent, and really knowing that this is the kind of language it's basically nothing but language, right? So it's you knowing that this is the kind of language that I can have to represent either of the two sides. And basically, if you are also, I think, if you are representing a seller side and you've received a buy side draft or draft from a lawyer who is representing an investor, and while you're doing a full blown markup, you're revising the document logically, thinking that, okay, how is this clause going to work out, how is the closing mechanism going to work out, right? So for me to know the entire process would definitely help. So I think, yeah, so if you just basically pick up a share subscription agreement and see the the major heads of in an agreement, and know what is required for that particular clause. So you would start off with conditions precedent. You would see that okay, these are CPs. What are CPs? What is a condition under the Contract Act, and what happens in case I breach a condition, right? After CPs, I move on to closing. Then what are the items that are usually typically done on closing date? I need to know that. So if it is if it's a company which is issuing shares, what are the closing items? If it is a company whose shares are being bought and sold, then what are the basic closing items? Okay, what are the kind of filings that I would require as part of the transaction? Okay, after I'm done with closing, I then move on to the next stage. If you have conditions subsequent, right, then you have reps and warranties. I've already done my investment. I want to save myself from any misrepresentation, any fraud that the seller might have undertaken, and I didn't really know of it. So how do I save myself? So you have indemnification, you knowing the entire concept of indemnification. So I think it's, for anybody, it's important to really know. Just basically pick up a document, see what the heads are, and do your own research, and basically just knowing what you can just do with language to save your client.
I got it. So, we have reached almost towards end of our discussion. We have a few minutes left. So we'll take some of the questions from our viewers. Kunal Chandrian is asking question law firms.
So in terms of you working the hardest, I think anything that you're doing requires a lot of hard work. Okay, so if you're working on an opinion, you really need to work hard on the research that you're doing for the opinion. But yes, M&A transactions and your basic PE transactions, because it is so time consuming and really depends. If you're from the investor side, yes, you're doing a diligence process. Yes, it is very time consuming, but you, I mean, the timelines.
I would suspect that capital market spends most time in the office.
Of course.
Capital
So
market
I mean,
spends.
so there are certain teams which are considered to be the benchmark, right? So you have the securities team. If you're staying beyond the securities team, then you're having a very bad day. Uh, and so it really depends on the kind of work that you're doing, right? Because for SEC team, it is a lot of work in terms of them preparing a document which is so huge, right? And it's not just a result of a few days or a few weeks, it's a product of months. And if you typically look at what all goes into an IPO document, you will understand the kind of work that is really required. And it's not just one transaction that you're working on. Most of the times you have one or two or three deals happening at the same time. So yes, you would see people staying back late in the night, but that is mostly not because of just one transaction. You're doing multiple things in a day, and which is why you're unable to do it. So most of the times, yes, you will find clients which will give you realistic timelines for a diligence process also. But sometimes it is, yes, they do understand that the diligence won't take that much time. So you're given only 2 or 3 days. So it depends really. It's I mean, on a lot of factors, whether you're on one or whether you're on multiple transactions.
All right. So apart from that, we have like I think another part of his question was that about do people like initial years understandable, but do I have to keep working very long hours throughout my career if I am a transactional lawyer?
Okay, so yes, the grind initially is quite more, but when I have looked at my seniors, peers at KCO and SAs at KCO as well, they do uh, stay back quite late in the night as well, uh, because most of the day is not gone in you doing the work, because most of the day really goes into you coordinating, reviewing. It's the nature of work would slightly differ. You are not the first person doing the work, you're just simply the one who's reviewing work. So there is some sort of reliance as well on your juniors. But to be really honest and candid with you, life is more or less going to remain the same no matter what level it is. one needs to
Yeah,
understand
one
that the
needs to understand that the work
is quite
is quite
time consuming, and
time consuming, and
it's a
there
lot
is
of
it's a
hectic
lot
work
of
as well. So
hectic work as well. So
The only thing I can say on the bright side is that as people become partners and not junior partners but very senior partners, the kind of time they spend at work reduces as they have more trusted lieutenants. So
yeah.
yeah, maybe 15, 20 years into the practice, you can hope for like some respite, right?
Right. So yeah, I mean, so
yeah, I
like,
mean, so
couple of
like,
months back, I took
couple
a
of months back,
really
I took
nice
a
15-day,
really nice.
20-day leave. So once in a while, you do get your time as well. So, and also it depends on other factors as well. How big is your team, and how many people can fill in if you're away on a vacation. So at least here we do have the concept of, you if you're going on a long week long break, or a 2 week long break, you are not supposed to take work with you while you're vacationing. It's usually a transition to people. So it also really depends on how the firm functions in terms of administrative processes. But usually I've seen people not take up work, at least at KCO, unless you're at a really senior level, and if you're not there, and the transaction just wouldn't happen. So unless really required, you're not supposed to take up work. So yeah, every once in a while, you do get your 2 or 3 weeks off. That's not an issue.
And I think that depends a lot on the farm that you're working in, because a
Correct.
lot of farms are there which are, you do not have this mindset that you need to take vacation. There are farms which are very particular about that you
Correct.
must take your vacation, you must have your holidays, you must have your time off. And there
Correct.
are farms who do not believe in that concept. There are farms, there are bosses. Sometimes it's not about a farm, but also about your boss particularly. Sometimes there are lawyers who believe in working late. I have seen say a senior, not directly my boss, but somebody else's boss, who used to come to work every day at 2 p.m. and leave at 3 p.m. in the morning every day. That was her routine. And her juniors had to work with her at on those timelines, and there was nothing that we could do about
Yeah.
it. So those situations also exist. Okay, so we have another question from Gog Bhatt 93. Okay, that's the username GogBhat93. Can you shift from litigation to corporate law firm? If yes, then any suggestions how to do so? Will an LLM in corporate law from NLU's help? Okay, there are many questions, but yeah, how to shift from litigation to corporate law firms, if it is possible, and how can it be done?
Okay, so also this is again, I mean, firm related issue. So for at least at KCO, at bigger law firms, I know that you do get the chance to do a rotation where you're basically working with different teams. You've done 3 or 4 months with the litigation team, a couple of months with the corporate team. You can make up your mind in the first few years. You can decide what you really want to do if you're unsure. But once you've done the rotation bit, you've decided what you really want to do. I think after a few years, it is slightly difficult for you to just go from litigation to the corporate side of things, because then you are just simply considered someone who doesn't have the kind of experience that you're looking at for corporate law. So you're basically considered as a fresher for someone who's not done corporate law at all and has done litigation. And how to really do it, I simply can't answer that because I don't know how to really do it. But um, just realistically speaking, if you are a fresher and you're just about to enter, I think you can take a few years for yourself. You can do a bit of litigation work. And I mean, this is something that I decided for myself in my internship time. I did a few litigation internships, I did a few corporate internships. I decided at that point in time as well. um, uh, but there's no harm in you picking up litigation for the first few years. I've seen a lot of people who've started off doing litigations. In fact, the senior lawyers I've seen at smaller law firms, all of them, and even at bigger law firms, I've seen people who are old, who have been in the profession for really long. All of them, most of them, started off with litigation, and you know um, ended up being on the corporate side. um, but I think it's about the trend as well, because now you have more number of people who have a set mind frame that this is really what I want to do right from the beginning, and you will see lesser and lesser opportunities for people to migrate. I think it's about us being in different times. The fact that you see senior lawyers having both litigation and corporate careers, I think that is going something which might just reduce in the future. So I think first few years you can take your time out and decide.
Yeah, if you're like really young in the profession, you have an opportunity to decide that okay, I want to work in after litigation. You can decide no, I want to move to corporate. Doing an LLM in corporate law is not going to help much in that regards. But yes, it is possible to move in. Especially, you can move into the litigation team in corporate law firms if you have good litigation background and good experience. And in the end of the day, I think what the problem with the challenge for a law firm is that if you have no idea about transactional law or anything and you come at a senior level, it's not possible for them to train you or spend the money while they're training you. Right? They pay you salary while they train you. It's not an option. So
Yep.
it really depends on your skills, because I think if you want to do transactional law work, at a law firm, I have seen what worked for people is that if they were litigators, they started doing some transactions with smaller companies. Maybe they work with a few startups and their transactions. So they had the experience of working with, SHAs, and they had experience of working with investors. So after that, they found it really easier to get into law firms, because when law firms were happy that okay, you actually know the work, you're not completely rookie in that area, so they can consider you. But if you're a senior person and trying to jump from litigation to corporate law, probably getting it right away is a little difficult unless you are able to build a small boutique practice of your own, which is very much possible. And apart from that, the other option would be to start working for a company. Companies are very open to hiring their in-house teams, a lawyer from a litigation background. So there you get, and also if you work in an in-house team, you get a very diverse experience of working on different kinds of matters. After that, jumping ship to a law firm is more realistic and possible. Would you agree? I mean
Yeah, I do.
that's what I would
Yeah, I
say.
do.
Of course, of course.
Of
Yeah,
course,
I
of
do.
course. Yeah, I do.
But I've seen a lot of
But I've
people
seen a lot
who've
of people who've
taken up corporate
taken up
litigation with
corporate
firms.
litigation with firms.
So I think that is a
So
good
I think that
attitude.
is a good attitude.
Yeah. So, Valiammai Palaniyappan is asking, what does so Valiammai Palaniyappan is asking, what does a compliance team in a corporate firm do? Please enlighten. Yeah, there are compliance team in some of the big law firms.
Right. So, we do have a compliance team, which is, not that big. We only have a few people doing it. But most of the times, you would have lawyers just simply advising clients on a long-term basis in terms of their usual filings, their returns required under the act. You would have basic registration requirements. Your employment related stuff, employment laws, which generally affect your business. So you would have long term clients, not like how you have transactional clients where you just have a client for a particular transaction and not on a long term basis. You have compliance teams would work full fledgedly with a particular client over a longer duration. They will tell you more about what the tick box items are, for a company, in terms of, for example, if a company has received some sort of an investment, you have returns to be filed under the foreign exchange laws. You have the FLA returns, and whenever there is some sort of a new law that comes about. For example, now you have the beneficial ownership rules that have just been notified. So you have certain new compliances to be made. The compliance team would just then reach out to all clients that probably the firm has, reach out to them and let them know of any new requirement under the law. let it be under FEMA Companies Act, or it being a sector specific law. Reaching out to clients, letting them know of any new requirements. These are basically the things that you would end up doing. And also you do have people who do a lot of liaising with regulatory authorities. So if you do need some sort of an opinion about what the ministry thinks about something, so this is typically something that you would see in bigger firms, where you have particular teams which are just liaising with the RBI, getting their inputs on stands taken on a particular regulation. So I think, yeah, so that this is the kind of work that would really be required of a compliance team. Yeah.
So the only thing I would like to add to that is that if you plan to work on a compliance team rather than targeting to work in the compliance team of a law firm, which is very small, and all lawyers tend to do some compliance for their clients, but uh, but if you want to be a compliance specialist right now, multinational companies and big corporates are hiring a lot of compliance specialists in house. So those lawyers, especially who have done CAS or has specialization in labor laws or different kind of statutory compliance law related laws, they have a lot of opportunities. So I think that brings us to an end to this discussion. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we really appreciate you taking out your valuable time and sharing so many insights with us.
Thanks a
And
lot.
we hope to have you back again someday. And before you go, also, any final message for the young lawyers and law students who might be interested in working in law firms?
Oh, right. So, I mean, the parting words would be for people to just be at it. Just give importance to the opportunity, and be grateful to the opportunities that you get. Because there are people who really do not have what you have, right? So I think it really it depends on how humble you are, and whether your outlook towards your career is on the right track. So I think that is really important.
All right. Thank you so much,
Okay.
and thank you everybody. Have a great weekend. Uh, yes. Thank you so much, Shwetank. And I am
Thank you,
just
Ramnesh.
addressing all the viewers and listeners also, and requesting them do subscribe. And we will be back next week on Monday, 8 to 9 p.m. again. Do come and watch us again. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Bye.